in 87 when Permanent Vacation came out and suddenly Aerosmith was back
Yeah.
from the dead. Like that could have happened with a band like Skid Row with an album like this.
You can sit there and also say that David Lee Roth's voice didn't hold up. He never had a voice to begin with anyway. So
You're listening to it and you're like, how the fuck is that even possible?
if Sebastian Bach was singing on this one,
Right.
good God, it would have been amazing.
I mean, luckily we're still some sexy bitches, but
Got that.
that's right.
It's missing that Van Halen sound because Michael Anthony isn't singing background vocals.
I mean, your balls just dropped last week and your voice has changed already too.
Yeah, but
So
I picked them up, so I'm good.
I'm sure this thing fucking went aluminum as far as sales.
And I think if they did have a album like this with their third album, I think we'd be talking about Skid Row in a completely different light.
Here's my cat, Steph Kitty, who was a lost, lonely soul. And if she keeps biting me, she's going to be lost and lonely again here pretty quick. The cat's sitting down here where you can't see it. Who knows what's going on down there?
Guru finally got some pussy.
Excuse me. Look, I came here to do two things: chew bubblegum and talk hair metal. And it looks like I'm almost out of bubblegum. Welcome to the Hair Metal Guru. My name is Anthony. They call me the Guru. And today, look, we got this sexy beast, Bryan, back here because we are going to be talking about something completely different than what we've been doing. We've been covering all the years of hair metal. Well, now we're going to, I was going to say back to the future, but I guess to the present, because we are going to be talking about hair metal bands from the heyday, but albums they put out in the 21st century. So we tried to find, and not just the hair metal bands, but maybe even members of hair metal bands. So, and albums that we really liked that were put out after the glory days were over. So that's the topic. Bryan, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me on again. Always a pleasure.
And maybe you can explain the topic. You were the one who threw out the idea. So why don't you give a little clarification on what we're going for here?
Yeah. Yeah, these are some of them are albums from bands that were big back in the day, and some are albums from band members from bands that were big back in the day. So maybe a guy started a new band, maybe they're
Yeah.
solo, maybe they've teamed up with other big names from back in the day. So that's kind of what we're going for here.
And the albums had to come out in the 2000s.
Yes. Yeah.
So in the 21st century. So we each decided to come up with five. And before we get into it, here's my cat, Steph Kitty, who was a lost, lonely soul. And if she keeps biting me, she's going to be lost and lonely again here pretty quick. So I'm just kidding. She was found outside my work and made her way to my house. And so here she is. Anyway.
Yeah, it's been a while. The Guru finally got some pussy. We'll continue.
Finally, because it's been so long. I'm like, I don't even know what you do anymore. Do you put it in their ear or what?
Right, whatever floats your boat.
And I wanted to show if you're a fan of the underground, the unknown hair metal bands like we are. Well, this is an ad for Johnny Crash, who put out a fantastic album called Neighborhood Threat in 1990. Some people say that it has some AC/DC vibes to it. I can see some of that, but it's really just streetwise, sleazy hard rock, in my opinion. Great album, Neighborhood Threat from Johnny Crash. So that was hanging on my wall downstairs.
Nice.
So anyway, we each came up with five, and it was kind of difficult because after I started doing a research, like there's a lot of shit, that has come out in the 2000s from bands that were big back in the day that I liked. So, how what was your process? Like how did you come up with your five?
The ones I have were the first ones that came to mind. And then when I actually thought about it,
Yeah.
I had a few that were like, oh shit. There's a couple I cut. So it's like I'm trying to fit a five was usually we do 10.
Yeah.
When you said five, it's like, all right, we'll have a more manageable time frame on the video. But yeah, it was a good amount. I probably have enough for a second episode if we ever decide to do that. But yeah, there was a few that just killed me to cut from this. There's at least three I'm looking at my list now that was like, I could easily put them on here. But
yep. I had a couple that I knew right away. And then I did what I usually like for all the years of hair metal that we did. I went to Google and I just searched hair metal albums in the 2000s because you forget. I mean, at least at my age, I do. So then I was looking through that, and I'm like, oh shit, I forgot about that. Oh shit, yeah, that's right. So then I ended up with this huge list. So today I spent a lot of time listening to some of these albums, narrowing it down to five. I definitely think we'll have to do a part two. So hey, before we get into it, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you on X and about your show on Station Head?
Definitely. I'm on X, formerly known as Twitter, at HB Basement. Always talking music there. And on Fridays, I got a show on Station Head that covers the deepest of tracks, the rarest of bands, and the little known songs from the biggest name artists from basically the glam metal classic age, even after that. Play stuff
Yep.
before and after as well. But yeah, check that out. So I'm playing songs that you don't really hear from these bands. No, Pour Some Sugar on Me, Dr. Feelgood, or Here I Go Again. And I'm doing the deeper cuts. But yeah, definitely check it out, folks.
Yes, and follow him on X. Follow me on X at Hair Metal Guru. Join the conversation. There's a big group of podcasters and just hair metal fans that sit and talk about this shit all the time. So join us there. With that, we've each got five albums from the 2000s from hair metal bands that had some modicum of fame back in the day. Bryan, what is your number five album from this list?
All right, no particular order. It's Sebastian Bach's Angel Down from 2007. And this album is just killer. I mean, like I said, the order doesn't matter. It's one of my favorite all-time albums.
Yep.
You got Love Is a Bitch Slap, You Don't Understand, Taking You Down With Me. There's a killer cover of Back in the Saddle from Aerosmith. And By Your Side, probably one of the best ballads ever. It's just that good.
You pussy.
And trying to cater to you. But you're talking to me or the cat. But,
the cat's sitting down here where you can't see it. Who knows what's going on down there? Oh, geez.
But at the time when this came out, this was the only recorded stuff Axl did, I think, since what was that covers album, the Spaghetti Incident. Until Chinese Democracy came out a year or two later. Because he's on a couple of the songs. But yeah, this is a great album. This album, if this was Skid Row's third album, it would have been big. And it kind of continues that whole attitude and sound that they had from Slave to the Grind. Absolutely killer stuff. Love this album.
I love that album. I love that title, Angel Down, and it's got a cool cover. Also a painting done by his dad, who also did the Slave to the Grind cover. And you mentioned my favorite song on that album, You Don't Understand. Holy shit. And you're right, By Your Side is a fucking great ballad. Love pussy ballads. Love pussy. I'm just kidding. And yes, it would have been cool to see what, if Skid Row had put out an album like that instead of Subhuman Race. Granted, it was 1995. It probably wouldn't have mattered, but Subhuman was such a fucking shit show. At least Angel Down would have had the respect of the fans,
definitely,
like Subhuman Race.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, it's heavy, just like Slave to the Grind.
Yes,
I don't think there's a bad track on it, and I think if they did have a album like this with their third album, I think we'd be talking about Skid Row in a completely different light than two solid, really good albums, and then that crap album, and then Revolving Door lead singers after that. Ever since,
and I think so. That was always my favorite Sebastian Bach solo album. I did not, or there was some decent stuff on Give 'Em Hell. What's the other? Not the newest one. There's another one besides Give 'Em Hell.
Kicking and Screaming.
I didn't think Kicking and Screaming was that good. So
I think it was better than the one after that. Was Kicking and Screaming the last one or the one before?
I think it was Kicking and Screaming, then Give 'Em Hell.
Yeah.
And then Child Within the Man.
Yeah.
So I'll say this. I think Child Within the Man is maybe it's up there with Angel Down.
Yes.
I thought those other two were kind of disappointing. So
I want to say that every YouTube channel I watched that reviewed the latest one, they always said it's not as good as it's not
Right.
Angel Down level, but
Right.
it's better than the previous two, which I think is a solid album. I think the last one is a solid
Sure.
album.
Sure.
Album
Totally.
cover stinks. The title sucks, but
Yeah.
the album itself is pretty good.
Yes. And you mentioned it. Axl Rose sang on 3 fucking
Is
songs.
it three?
And I'm just shocked that I mean, it wasn't going to go platinum, but you know, I'm shocked that it didn't get more attention because you're right. That was the first thing Axl had recorded since like 93. We'd
Yeah.
all been sitting there waiting for Chinese Democracy to come out. And I just remember Sebastian saying, I thought, I thought that album was going to do better, but, it didn't. And that's the way it goes. So,
Goddamn good album too.
yeah.
So I happened to see him on tour with. He opened up for Dokken and Poison on this album. It was like, God, this album should have been bigger.
Yeah.
It's that fucking good, but
Yep. Yeah.
should
So,
have.
yeah, definitely. If you're a Skid Row guy, go check out Angel Down and Child Within the Man.
Yeah,
Go ahead and
solid
skip
album.
the other 2, 3. So, all right. On to my number 5. In 1989, there was a band called Shotgun Messiah that put out their debut album, the self-titled, and there was a couple minor hits on there. Shout It Out, Don't Care About Nothing. Well, the singer on that album was a guy named Zinny Zan, stage name. And so for whatever reason, the band is like, that album sold, I think, 400,000 copies. It might have gotten close to gold. But for whatever reason, the band splits up. Tim Skold takes over lead vocals on Shotgun Messiah. So what happens to Zinny Zan? Well, he goes on to do some other projects, and one of them was an album in 2005, and the project was called Zan Clan, after Zinny Zan. And the album is called We Are Zan Clan, Who the Fuck Are You? It's got to be up there with some of the greatest album titles of all time. So, I remember, I think, shit, I might have bought this from like Paris Records, really small record label.
Yeah.
I'm sure because they're from, now I can't remember, but overseas, they're not from America. And
It's
I think,
Scandinavian.
yeah, it's like Scandinavia. So I think he went back to his home country and I think recorded. And please correct me in the comments. I'm probably wrong about this, but Paris Records picks it up, releases it. So I buy it. I'm like, fuck yeah, I was a huge Shotgun Messiah fan. Well, the opening track, as soon as that came on, it's called Go, Go, Go. Holy shit. I'm like, that sounds like it could have been a single off of the debut Shotgun Messiah album. And then there's 4, High Speed Junkie, Silver Bullet Toy is catchy as shit. Deja Vu, and then he covered the Cheap Trick song Surrender. And we were talking about this before we hit record. Like it does not stray from the Shotgun Messiah sound. The guitars are just blistering. His vocals have not changed at all from the Shotgun debut. It's a great album. I'm sure this thing fucking went aluminum as far as sales. But if you're a Shotgun Messiah fan, go check it out. Zan Clan, We Are Zan Clan, Who the Fuck Are You from 2005 comes in at number 5.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like Shotgun Messiah.
Yep.
I mean, musically, it's a little different. It's not quite the same. There is a difference there, but once you hear the vocals kick in, it's Zinny's voice. Yeah, it's almost like if Shotgun Messiah kept the original lineup and put an album out in the early 2000s, and it's a killer album. Really good.
And
I think we've talked about this before. I like the debut by Shotgun Messiah better than Second Coming, and a lot of people second album better, but I like Zinny Zan's voice way better than Tim Skold's.
I think I liked Zinny Zan's voice. I thought some of the songwriting on Second Coming may have been a little bit better. So the song choices, but I love both of them. So I kind of go back and forth between which one I like better, but I really do like Second Coming. But this album, I can play right next to other, right next to those Shotgun Messiah albums and not be disappointed, not be like, okay, there's a big drop off here. So
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that totally.
all right.
I totally forgot this album even existed until I saw your list. And, oh shit, that's
Oh,
right. Good album.
and I have the CD, and that's why I had to go Google because I fucking forgot about it. I'm like, holy shit, I love that album. So I'd, yank it out today and play it. So yeah, great album. All right,
Yeah.
let's move on to your number 4. What do you got?
My number 4 has Joel Estee from Bang Tango on lead vocals. It's Beautiful Creatures, self-titled from 2001. It's almost like Bang Tango without the funk to it. I like the funk of Bang Tango. I like that. The first two albums are definitely great. But let's see what I have. They have at 1 a.m. to start off the album is good. Kicking for Days, Wasted, Kick Out, Ride. I mean, it's such a good album. Unfortunately, I only got 2 albums from these guys. The second one, Deuce, I believe, had a different guitarist. But this first album, I just love this goddamn album. It's so good.
Now, I remember when that thing, and I bought that thing right when it came out. And I'll be honest, I need to revisit it because I haven't listened to it in forever. But there was a lot of publicity about that album. There was a lot of people talking about it, and I can't remember
Yeah.
what tours, but they were on some tours. They were getting promotion. They were getting to go on some TV shows. So I don't know exactly what happened with that, but you're right. Like, so that album got, people were talking about it. The second album kind of died without a whimper. But I just remember that being a big topic of conversation was Beautiful Creatures, but it just didn't pan out.
Yeah, I thought one of the songs was on a soundtrack or something.
That could have
Don't,
been.
I remember, I think 1 a.m. or Wasted being played a lot. I remember hearing a lot about that. Probably one of those songs had me go out and buy the album. But yeah, every song on this is just great. It's a good goddamn album.
And
I wish we got more from them.
yeah,
You know?
and the part of Bang Tango that I didn't like was all the funk. I'm not
The
a
one thing
big
that made them different.
I'm not a big funk guy. So when you say, "Hey, it's like Bang Tango without the funk," I'm like, "All right, you got rid of the bullshit." No, not me.
I like that. I mean, it sets them apart from other guys.
It did. It did. It made it, it almost put them up the Jane's Addiction, Red Hot Chili Peppers, not quite that much funk, but
Yeah, it was. It's almost one of those bands. I don't know if you would say they're not glam metal or hair metal, but yeah,
right.
they were a little different from all the other ones.
Totally. There is a great documentary that is free on YouTube on Bang Tango. And now I can't remember the name of it, but go check it out. It's like an hour and 20 minutes. It's really well done. And you see the highs and lows of being in Bang Tango. When there was talk of them being the next big thing to them playing shows in front of 20 people and it's a fucking disaster. So if you want to see what a hair metal band who was kind of big back in the day and what it was like as the years went on, this documentary follows them through the whole shebang and it's really well done. So go check that out.
Yeah, because I saw them after Dancing on Coals came out in a small club. It wasn't like a huge place. I mean, it was pretty packed for a small place, but they weren't selling out arenas, that's for sure.
No, no. I saw them on Warrant's I think it was the Ultraphobic tour, and it was Warrant,
Mm.
LA Guns, and Bang Tango. And LA Guns was promoting what was the fucking album with the gangster on the American Hardcore,
Yes,
and that was a
yes.
shit show. But Bang
Yeah.
Tango was actually pretty good. Warrant was good. LA Guns played like that whole fucking American Hardcore album. Anyway, it's like what a shit show. Tracy was wearing bib overalls. They played like 2 songs that people would know, and Chris Van Dahl, the singer, like just kept putting the microphone out in the crowd and letting people in the crowd sing it.
No, it wasn't even
Rip
Phil
and
Lewis.
tear. It was like rip
Uh,
and tear. I don't think they did Ballad of Jane. It was like they were going, okay, we're really gonna try this heavy shit for a while. Anyway, off
yeah.
topic, but yeah. So Bang Tango, cool band. They were never my favorite thing, but great documentary, and that Beautiful Creatures, man, it was a big thing for a little while.
Yeah.
All right, my number four. If you followed the channel, you know that I swing from Hanoi Rocks is nuts whenever possible. I got a lot of Hanoi Rock shit. I can never fucking figure out my thumb here. There it is. When the Hanoi Rocks catalog got reissued. And the reason I got into Hanoi Rocks was strictly because of reading that Guns N' Roses and Skid Row really loved Hanoi Rocks. So I was like, well, they love Hanoi Rocks. I got to go check this shit out. So I really got into that band. Well, they split up in 85, all the tragedy stuff. Michael Monroe comes out in 89 with his solo album, Not Faking It, which a lot of people thought was going to be big. It was not, had a minor hit with Dead Jailer Rock and Roll. Axl Rose appeared in that video. But Michael Monroe has been putting out solo albums he's put out a shit ton of product and it's all solid. He's kind of got to where he combines the punk sound with the hard rock sound. And most people know I like punk. But in 2013, he put out an album called Horns and Halos. And in his band, it was Steve Conte and who wrote a bunch of the songs, Steve Conte, who was in the band Company of Wolves. He also did some time with the New York Dolls, and he's a great songwriter. Also, Dragon from the Backyard Babies. If you don't know the Backyard Babies, I need to find a time to talk about the Backyard Babies. I think they're from Sweden. Fucking love that band. And Sammy Yaffa from Hanoi Rocks was in his band. So it's got a punk hard rock sound. The Ballad of the Lower East Side is great. Saturday Night Special is a really up-tempo rocker. And then there's my favorite song on the album is a mid-tempo. It's not a ballad, but it's called Stained Glass Heart. They made a video for it. Go check that out. And then I'll say Horns and Halos, the title track, and Happy Never After. Michael Monroe just put out shit, I think in 2022, a solo album called I Live Too Fast to Die Young. The guy is got to be close to 70 and he's still skinny as a rail and has the most energetic concerts. I've never seen him live, but I watch a lot of his shit on YouTube. So he's just a phenomenal frontman. So I'll always promote Michael Monroe or Hanoi Rocks. Horns and Halos, number 4.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good pick. And you're right. It has a punk sound to this album. Where part of me almost feels like this is where Hanoi Rocks might have went if they were together still.
Totally.
Didn't Hanoi Rocks put an album out in the beginning?
Yes. They put out an album called 12 Shots on the Rocks in the 2000s.
That's one with Obscured on it, right?
And I think so. And then they put out another album called Street Poetry.
Okay.
And I can't remember what. So I actually thought about those two, but out of all those, I like the Horns. So I just was like, I'm just going to pick one. So I took Horns and Halos. That's my favorite out of them. But yeah, those are solid albums too.
His voice has a grit to it as well, which gives the songs more balls to it, I guess you can say. But also when you're younger, your voice is completely different too. Then when you're 67, your voice is not on the same level as when you're 24, unless you're Sammy Hagar. But that's going to change time.
Yeah. And your balls just dropped last week and your voice has changed already too.
Yeah, but I picked them up, so I'm good.
And I was gonna say, I don't know, do you know the Wild Hearts, the band The Wild Hearts?
Yes.
Ginger from the Wild Hearts. And I'm a big Wild Hearts fan. I think he did some songwriting and a little bit of touring around this period with Michael Monroe as well. But yeah, I'm a Wild Hearts fan, and the guy's notorious as a really solid songwriter. So anyway, throw that out there. All right, moving on to your number 3.
My number 3 is actually a band that was from before the 80s, actually. It's Van Halen's last album, Different Kind of Truth, from 2012. And I remember hearing the leadoff single, Tattoo, when I was like, what is going to be the dog shit? Oh. And it's a goddamn good album. You skip that first one. That's like the jump of that album. It's like, skip it. And the rest of the album is surprisingly good. You got Chinatown, Big River, Beats Working, Stay Frosty, and easily my favorite song off the album, Blood and Fire. It's just a great album. I mean, the only downside I would say with it, and not to knock Wolfgang's playing on bass, he does well. He does very well on the album. It's missing that Van Halen sound because Michael Anthony isn't singing background vocals.
I was actually just thinking, I was like, I'm gonna ask because I haven't listened to that. I heard that Tattoo song and I was like, what the
That
fuck?
song
It
stinks. The
was
rest of the album
horrible.
is solid. It's really goddamn good.
But I was gonna ask you because I knew Wolfgang was around. Like, do they have? It's probably doesn't have any background vocals like you would get on a normal
It's,
Van Halen
it's
album.
not the Van Halen background vocals. Even
Right.
when I saw him live on tour for this album, that's the one thing that was really missing because Van Halen has a distinct sound because of that.
Yeah.
Not, again, I'm not knocking Wolfgang. The guy's talented. His solo albums are phenomenally good. The guy could play. I mean, it was because of him this album even got made. Because a lot of these songs were old stuff that from back in the day.
Yes.
And Wolfgang was like, "Hey, Dad, put an album out." And
Yeah.
I want to say Eddie said something like, "Well, you got to play with me" or something like that. And he was like, "All right, I have no problem doing that. It's not a problem."
Yeah.
And
You
yeah,
want me
I
to go on
remember.
tour with Van Halen? Okay.
Yeah, and by then he's done. He was already on a tour with them,
Yep.
and like that's got to be the greatest take your kid to work day
Oh
ever.
shit.
At stage with Eddie Van Halen. But yeah, I remember I got it, and then the Tattoo. I'm like, not that good. And then you listen to the rest of the album, you're like, holy shit, that Tattoo song does not represent this album at all. It's a solid fucking album. Yeah, I mean, you could sit there and also say that David Lee Roth's voice didn't hold up. He never had a voice to begin with anyway. So
No. I was gonna ask you, I was gonna ask, how does Dave sound on the album? Because again, I only listened to one song.
it's David Lee Roth and he's older. I mean, but it's Eddie Van Halen, and he plays some really good stuff on this. And
Yeah.
sadly, it's the last recorded thing we'll hear from him.
Right.
But yeah, it's a very solid album.
I'm gonna go.
For some reason, it wasn't on Apple or streaming for a while.
And okay, and I heard that was because Dave didn't want it. Charlie, come on. Charlie, come here. Charlie, get in here.
Set this cat straight.
Yeah. Stop trying to fuck the cat. No, I'm kidding. Cat probably try to fuck Charlie. Okay. Yeah, because Wolfgang had been talking about like, how come people can't listen to that album? And kind of implied, like without coming out and saying it's David Lee Roth, implied that there were people in the family that didn't want it out. And then suddenly, if you follow Greg Renoff, who wrote the book Van Halen Rising, and is good buddies of ours on X, he just shared that now the album is available.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah, and I heard that David Lee Roth didn't want it on there because he didn't like his vocals on it.
Yeah,
but if you listen to Live in Tokyo, which was the same tour, his voice sounds like shit.
What I heard,
and it was like, why would you want that out, but not the album? I don't think his voice sucked. That's not. I'm not gonna go there with that. But it doesn't sound like the live album. The live album, it's like, oh god, but
yeah.
why did you make this kind of thing?
I saw Dave open up the last time when I saw Kiss on the farewell tour. If it's 2022, I don't know. I took my son,
which one.
I took my son. Yeah, exactly. I took my son to see him in 2022. He likes Kiss. He knows, the big Van Halen hits. But it was kind of hard because, I mean, number one, he's not jumping around and putting on the show, which I obviously I get that. You can't be fucking jumping out and doing the splits and shit. But vocally, so he's just standing there, but then the vocals were like, oh God, So anyway, his voice was never the selling point for Van Halen.
No.
So,
because when I saw them in 2012, I remember, me and my wife went. My wife's like, I turned to her and go, do you understand you are watching a rock legend right now?
Right.
This is something that you're blessed to see. You're watching Eddie Van Halen play guitar and you're rolling your eyes. I don't know you,
Yeah.
woman. Is this
Yeah.
you crazy? I mean, she's on this kind of music, so I kind of get that. But still, it was like,
You know,
that was one of my bucket list things to finally see Van
sure.
Halen. I'm glad that I did, especially, unfortunately, he's not with us anymore.
All right. We are on to my number three. Well, another band that I've tried to pump all the way through since this channel has started. They made, when I did the first bands that could have and should have but didn't, they were in there. They made multiple lists when we did all the years of hair metal, and it's Dirty Looks. And they continue, in 88, they put out Cool from the Wire, major label release. I think sold a few 100,000 copies, got some airplay. The follow-up, Turn of the Screw in 89, is another really solid album. I don't think it did as well as Cool from the Wire, but they kept playing, they kept releasing albums. Some are a little bit better than others. Some had some big production problems. But in 2008, they put out an album called Super Deluxe. And again, probably something that you were buying on Paris Records. It's not like this was getting some big national release. It was someplace that you're like, oh, looking at their website or at, maybe in the back of a magazine. Ooh, little things, Dirty Looks. So I buy this album and it is fucking phenomenal. Like it stands up there with the early Dirty Looks albums. Henrik Ostergaard, there are times if Ostergaard, fuck, I don't know. There are times when I hear him on this album and I think Bon Scott. And their guitar player, Paul Lydell, has now put out, he's got his own band now. I think he's played at times with Dangerous Toys in recent years. Great guitar player. Go check out the songs. Bring Me Down is the opening track. Holy shit, I love that song. Million Miles Away, Not Enough, Fast Ride, and Thin Red Line. Uh, I just it's like if I can listen to an album and go, you know what? It won't sound out of place by their big albums. That's the biggest compliment I can give it because I love Cool from the Wire and Turn of the Screw. Um, Henrik died in 2011. I think he had a bad alcohol problem. I think that's what led to him dying. But damn, they put out a lot of great albums. And this is a band that you always knew what you were going to get. AC/DC inspired hard rock. So I salute them. Super Deluxe comes in at number three.
Yeah, so I'm not that familiar with it. I know of it and I've heard it a few times, so I'm not like, because after those first two, which are great albums, I kind of dropped off with these guys. And again, they didn't have the immense popularity to know they were coming out an album in what 2000? What'd you say? Eight? This came out.
2008.
Yeah, it's something like that. That yeah, a small label will have to put this thing out
Totally.
because they weren't making waves in the music industry in 2008. They didn't really make that much in the late 80s, which is sad. It's just sad that they didn't because they such a solid band. And you're right, they do have that heavy AC/DC influence.
Yep, yep. I really, I kind of think because like a band like Rhino Bucket, a band like Dirty Looks, I think that description, oh, AC/DC inspired, I mean, obviously AC/DC is a huge band, but I think, sometimes people take that as, oh, there's a copycat band, and I wonder if that hurt them. But
Yeah,
I love them.
maybe because it's like, oh, they kind of sound like something good. Who's going to be like, well, I'm not listening to that. It
Right.
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Because there's another band out of Australia, Airborne. They kind of
Oh,
sound
yeah.
heavy AC/DC influence. And it's
And I
like,
really like that band.
yeah, they're a really good band. And I never sat there and went, oh, this sounds like AC/DC. I'm not going to
Right.
listen to it. Like, I don't
Right.
understand that attitude.
I remember, so I wrote for my college paper way back in the day. So I interviewed George DeLevo from Rhino Bucket, and this is in the 2000s when I went back to college, and I just I asked him about the AC/DC comparisons, and you could tell he was kind of like over the we're an AC/DC sound alike band. So I just, I think I think a lot of bands, even if they do sound like somebody, they like to think of themselves as, hey, we're an original band. And, they don't always want to hear another band name when their band is talked about. Oh, Dirty Looks, kind of like AC/DC. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah, people do that a lot too.
oh,
People
totally.
still do
Totally.
that. People are still doing that.
Shit. On whenever you would look at like Paris records there back in the day, they'd be in the magazines and it would always be like, here's this band, sounds like Skid Row and Poison. Every one of their albums was always advertised with a, if you like this, you'll like. So
I get that too for on an advertising kind of
right,
side of things. You want people to buy your shit, and it's an unknown
right.
band in 2007 or the fuck. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's got to be some kind of comparison. But even just like Greta Van Fleet, always they sound like Zeppelin, and it's like, all
Totally.
right, is that bad?
Yeah.
What's the
And and
problem with that?
and maybe nowadays it's lost its stigma of being a
Yeah,
bad thing, because nowadays, shit, how many times are back in the old days it was like, oh yeah, they sound like AC/DC, they sound like Zeppelin. Nowadays, fuck, I would love it if somebody said, hey, there's a new band who sounds like Zeppelin, or there's a new band who sounds like AC/DC. You don't get that very
yeah,
often these days because there's such a lack of music.
yeah.
Airborne was a good one. Airborne had that AC/DC sound. I really like that band. So, anyways,
Maybe because it's so far removed now, where it's not
right.
like it was.
The
Weird.
the nostalgia and the longing for that sound of what you grew up with is a lot more prevalent. I mean, shit, we're in our 50s.
Exactly.
I mean, luckily we're still some sexy bitches,
You
but
got that.
that's right. So, all right, enough about dirty looks. Let's move on to your number two.
My number two, I almost say it's a super group, but this is the self-titled debut from the Winery Dogs from 2013.
Yep.
And originally, it's got Mike Portnoy from Dream Theater fame. He was in Adrenaline Mob before this, done a bunch of other stuff, Sons of Apollo. Richie Kotzen had a stint in Poison, and Billy Sheehan obviously played with David Lee Roth and was in Mr. Big,
Yep.
Talus. And originally, John Sykes was supposed to sing and play guitar on this.
Yep.
I heard part of the problem was John Sykes is very methodical when he's in the studio, and the other two band members are like, we can't wait on this. We want to get this thing out there.
Yeah.
And they kind of left on amicable terms. It wasn't like they kicked them out or like, fuck you, whatever.
Right.
And Eddie Trunk, of all people, suggested to Mike Portnoy, how about Richie Kotzen? This guy can do it.
Yeah.
And this album is just killer. This is one of those albums that came out and I listened to like, holy shit, this is awesome. And the debut Elevate was really good. Great way to start this is what we're about. Desire is good. Time Machine is a great song. 6 Feet Deeper might be my favorite song off the album. Really good. The guy's had a few albums out since then. But yeah, this debut, though, I think it's still my favorite by them. And I remember listening to it going, wow, these guys really did something impressive.
Now, when you hear the players that are involved in that, like all those guys are known for being like uber talented. So I haven't listened to much Winery Dogs. I've heard some songs. Would you describe it as like, hey, this is a musician's band? You're going to get a lot of because Billy
No, no, no,
Sheehan,
no, no.
Richie Kotzen, whatever.
It's not crazy like that, but I mean, it's got a groove to it. I mean, just
Sure.
check it out. I mean, you're
Sure.
right. They're all super talented,
Yeah.
but it's not. I'm trying to think how we word this. It's not like this super technical, all over the place, Inway Malmsteen kind of thing. No, it's
Right.
not. It's not.
Right.
It's not.
Okay.
Like Elevate it has some of that aspect too, but it's a commercial friendly song. It's
Yeah.
something you listen to go, oh, I can see why this was the first single.
Right. And I remember, I mean, the first time I'd ever heard of Richie, is it Kotzen or Kotzen?
I say Kotzen, you say
Yeah.
Kotzen.
So whatever, tomato. But the first time I'd ever heard of him, well, maybe I'd heard of him, but was on the Poison Native Tongue album. And I'm not a huge fan of that. But a couple of my favorite songs, there's a semi-ballad called Until You Suffer Some, Fire and Ice. There's another song, Stand was the first single. And I really liked his background vocals. I was like, shit. He was kind of harmonizing or singing the high parts over Bret Michaels, and I was like, damn, that sounds really
I
good.
could sing.
So yeah, the guy can sing, and he's obvious. I've never listened, but he's put out tons of solo albums. Does this
Yeah.
Winery Dogs, and he was in Mr. Big for a
Yes,
brief
he was.
period.
Going to say that. Yep. He was a Mr. Big for a while. Yeah.
So I don't know what I mean. And I know they really I can't remember which album because I'm sure he was on an album that they released. I don't know which one it is. Anyway, I've never listened to it, but
I got to think of that one because I don't. Good question. I forget which one it is.
yeah. So
I don't know off the top of my head. Someone in the comments said after we say we suck, our list blows, and then this is the guy. This is the guy.
that's a hair metal.
That's not him, man. How could you say Van Halen? It's not him. All right. Got it.
Um, but yeah, that Winery Dogs, I mean, they get like a lot of attention. Like that's kind
They
of
should.
yeah, totally, totally. So I wouldn't mind seeing them live because I think that'd be kind of a fun show.
Yeah, definitely. I would totally love to see him live.
Okay, moving on to my number two. Shit. I've always said that there are five bands that since I started this channel I wanted to promote. Five. And there's many more, but there's always a first five that I come up with. Sleazebees, Wild Side, DAD, Electric Angels, and McQueen Street. And
I'm surprised you didn't say Lillian X. I thought they were coming up on
I mean, Lillian Axe had some.
Yeah.
I mean, people know about them. Like these other bands are like to me even less. Lillian Axe would definitely. I always just kind of considered them at least a little bit well known.
Yeah.
So,
I just said to get them involved in the show again. Just bring, bring
yeah,
Lillian X.
and fuck, like we haven't talked about Lillian Axe ever. But McQueen Street put out one of my favorite debut albums of all time in 1991 with their self-titled debut. Um, the songs My Religion, Money, Time, Only the Wind. Holy shit, that album is just and it's a great album, but their vocalist puts it on another level. Derek Welsh, when I did favorite vocalists with Ryan. I don't know if he was number one. If he wasn't, he was probably at number two. That debut album produced by Tom Werman. I don't know what happened. I mean, obviously it was a little too late in the game. Holy shit. Well, the album didn't sell that well. So they start to record the follow-up in 93. It gets shelved. All the hair metal bands are, they're losing their record contracts. The singer, Derek Welsh, I think another guy in the band, they go on to do some other projects. But in 2003, lo and behold, the stuff that was recorded in 93. So it was recorded in 93, but I included it because it wasn't released till 2003. The McQueen Street album 2 comes out in 2003. And I bought it right away. I was so jacked about it. And I'll be honest, I didn't listen to it a lot because I'm like, shit, it's not going to have the. So I've started in the last, well, really since this channel started, because you think about the band so much. So I was like, holy fuck. It is not as good as the debut. Remember, the debut is one of my favorite albums of all time, but it is fucking good. World Machine has a chorus that will not leave your brain. There's a cool ballad called What About Jane? Uh, then Strange Dreams, Bad Moon, holy shit. The Last Breath is another semi ballad. So there's five or six songs on this. And so there's a couple songs that I think are filler. But five or six songs that are just awesome. Derek Welsh, I hope I can interview this guy at some point because I want to hear what happened or what he thinks happened, because most people, there's been a lot of people on this channel that follow this channel that have said, dude, I never got into McQueen Street until you started talking about him. What a great band. So, yes, go check out 2 from 2003. And I'll just throw this out there. A song that they recorded long ago that didn't get released until 2020 called One Way Ticket It's a ballad. It is one of the best ballads, uh, one of my favorite ballads ever. I'm like, holy shit, how did this not get put out in some point? It's on YouTube, one-way ticket. It's amazing. Listen to McQueen Street however you can.
Yeah, that debut is phenomenal.
Oh,
Oh my god, so good. This one, I first of all, I didn't know it existed until maybe years after it came out.
yep. Yep.
But it's not as good as the debut,
No.
but it's still a solid album. There's
Yeah.
still some really good songs on it. And
Yes.
it's like it's one of those bands too late for the party that should have been bigger. If the debut came out in '89,
Oh,
maybe we'd be talking a different story about them. I mean, even '89, you might have gotten one or two big albums out.
yep.
But
Yep.
yeah, these guys was it what the debut came '91?
91.
It wasn't going to catch. Just wasn't going to be a big thing. '91 was
No.
yeah, a lot of bands put out quality albums, but unless you were Guns N' Roses or Metallica, you weren't selling millions. And it's a shame because yeah, these guys are really goddamn good. They're such a
And I
good
did
band.
Derek Welsh. Go check out some of the songs that are or if you haven't listened to the first album, I just think that guy's vocals, people talk about Sebastian Bach or whoever some of the great vocalists of the hair metal genre. I think that guy almost sings, you know, better than any of them. You know, can he do it live? I don't know. Is he the result
Uh,
of studio
but
trickery? Who knows? I have seen there are a couple clips of a couple live songs. He sounds really good. But anyway, on record, that dude has a voice that I'll put up against anyone's. So
mhm. I don't know if you'd make my top 10 list, but if someone had it like you had, I don't know, no problems with that.
right,
Yeah,
right.
the guy does have a good voice, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's such a shame because that debut album is such a solid album.
Fuck. I just
Yeah,
that band, like I said, those five those five bands that I just like my heart hurts for them that they never
but
got the
that
fame that
yeah,
that I wanted them to get.
but that's another band that their albums were on Apple Music and they weren't for some reason and just came back last few months. It's back on there. I don't know
Oh,
what the deal is with that. I don't know if there's the band gets involved, if there's
right,
record labels get involved, or
right.
I don't know. Probably money. Most likely it's money.
Oh yeah, yeah. So go check out McQueen Street, the first album and two from 2003. And
Yeah,
now
definitely.
we are at our number ones. What is your number one album from the 21st century?
My number one came out. I think it was my probably my personal top album of 2023. It's Six by Extreme. And when Rise, the first single, came out, everyone that likes this music was talking about it and say how kick ass that song was. I mean, literally, there were people breaking down Nuno solo and showing how to play it, and guitar YouTube channels were talking about it. And it really just showed that Nuno still has it and the
Yeah,
guy can spread. And top to bottom, I don't think there's a bad song on this album. Let's do it today. And there's some that not as good as others, but I think this might be their best album since Pornography. I mean, songs like Banshee, The Mask, Thicker Than Blood, like I said, Rise. There's so many good songs on this. I remember when the full album came out, some people were saying how songs like I think it's Over the Rainbow and Beautiful Girls. What is this? I'm going to skip those. Would you forget that Wholehearted and More Than Words are on Pornography? I mean, come on, they've been doing
yeah,
this stuff. And if you look at Extreme 3, that was all over the place musically because they're experimenting with different stuff. But yeah, this album, I remember when it came out last year, people were like, "Yeah, this album is bringing back rock." Basically, it's a goddamn good album, solid album. Like I said, my favorite album from last year.
yeah. And yeah, you're right. I remember seeing all sorts of YouTube videos popping up after Rise came out because everyone was talking about this solo. And I remember Nuno saying something to the effect of he wanted after Eddie Van Halen died, like he wanted to bring the guitar back, and not that he thought he was Eddie Van Halen, but he wanted to do something, that was inspired by Eddie or would make people, think about the guitar again. And he did
Yeah,
because Shit, Rick Beato, who is a guy who has millions of followers, was talking about it. It was all over the place, and you're listening to it, and you're like, how the fuck is that even possible?
Or how the fuck isn't this song huge?
Right,
I mean, to us, like the people that like this stuff, yeah, they were talking about it.
right,
But that thing should have been just big. I mean, it's such a good
yeah,
tune too.
yeah,
And you're right. It's like they put this album out with something to prove, and
right,
that one song alone, kind of that they accomplished it. It was like holy shit. Gary Sharon still has a voice. His voice still
oh,
sounds good on
totally,
this album. I mean, it sounds great. The whole
totally.
album, again, the whole album, I thought it was phenomenal. And yeah, if we did the list of albums from 2023, that would be my number one. It was that
Right.
it's that good.
I kind of lost after graffiti. I think I kind of shied away from extreme after that. And I'm sure part of it was, God, I got so sick of More Than Words, which, hey, it was a huge fucking song. I mean, I got sick of
Yeah,
it because it was played so much. So but that when Rise came out, that was the first time in a long time where I thought, holy shit, like I need to get back into extreme because you forget, or I forgot what I was missing out on. Like Sharon is a great singer, and Nuno
yes,
is one of the best guitarists around. So,
yeah. But also they don't put they since Extreme Two. Would they have two, three albums since?
well,
It's not a lot.
they had three sides to every story, waiting for the punchline. There was that
They rock.
Schwagadas
They
something,
rock, which is a good
whatever.
album.
Yeah, and then Rise, I think.
Yeah, I think Nuno even jokes somewhere saying, "Oh yeah, every 7 years we put an album
Yeah.
out." It's like yeah, they don't really do it that often, which is a shame because they still got it. It's just amazing how they can still put out an album like this.
And I'll say this for Nuno, he was married to the lead singer of the Baby Animals. Her name was like Susie DeMarchi. She was hot as shit.
Well,
Holy,
Nuno Betancourt, of course, you're gonna get ladies. I
ah,
mean, come on.
I had such a crush on her. Go check out the Baby Animals video for One Word. Oh, I love that chick. Jesus. And that was a good song too, by the way. Okay. Good for you, Nuno. Good score. All right.
Yeah.
My number one, uh, I this album should have blown up. It's Skid Row. It's Thick Skin. And this was so controversial because when it came out, people were like, "Oh, they're trying to be modern." You know, and it's Skid Row with some modern inflections. Like, it's not 1990 Skid Row. It's 2003 Skid Row. The album's called Thick Skin. And it's their first album without Sebastian Bach. Subhuman Race comes out, all sorts of shit happens. Sebastian gets kicked out in 96. So it wasn't until 2003 that they put out an album, and it was with a guy named Johnny Solinger.
That's right.
And he's got a really good voice. So yes, there are some modern. So the first single is called Ghost. There's a video
Great,
for it. I fucking love that song. Now, I know when that came out, some people
great
were like,
song.
oh, they're trying to be Creed. Well, no, it doesn't sound like Creed, but like I said, there are some modern influences to that song. I love that song, man. That chorus is so great. Then I'll give you Born a Beggar, amazing rock song. If you like really heavy Skid Row, thick as the skin, I think would have fit on Slave to the Grind. Check out that guitar riff at the beginning. And then a lot of people thought this was blasphemy, but they did a punk rock cover of I Remember You. Not It's
Yeah.
not a cover, it's their song, but they called it I Remember You Too. I thought it was amazing. Because it doesn't sound it's just the lyrics
Yeah.
from I Remember You, but it's punked up. And I fucking love punk and I love that version. Then there were two ballads, See You Around and One Light. I thought both of them could have been hits, especially See You Around. And I remember Rachel Bolan in an interview this couple years later. Obviously, the album wasn't going to sell like they wanted it to, but just him saying, that album should have hit. There were so many top-notch songs. I have no problem. I did a Skid Row album ranking a while back. It's one of the first videos I did on this channel. I can't remember where I put it, but there are, like I said, 5 or 6 songs on here that I think are amazing. I have no problem listening to this right next to the debut and Slave to the Grind. I think it's that good.
I mean, Ghost is probably one of my favorite Skid Row songs. That is a great song, and
Totally.
that song alone should have been big.
Oh,
I'll admit, I hear that song and I go, if Sebastian Bach was singing on this one,
right.
good God, it would have been amazing. Solinger has a good voice, though. I'm not going to say he doesn't.
Yep.
That's the one with New Generation on there, too,
Yep.
right? Yeah.
That's the
There's a
opening
lot of
song.
good songs on it, but yeah, unfortunately, 2003, Skid Row has a label on them, and no one's really, running out to buy this album. But I wanted to listen to it again, and it's not on Apple Music.
Oh,
They
really?
have, yeah, they have the first 3 with Sebastian Bach, and then the gang's all here. All the albums in between, nothing.
Hey, there's this new thing on the internet called YouTube,
I know, no, I get that. I
and they have
can't.
albums on there.
I know, asshole. I know,
Throwing it out
asshole.
there. That's how I listen to. I have the CD, but I just tend to. I just sit at my computer and listen to shit on there. So
Yeah, I got a life, but yeah, I don't understand how you have all these. How you have all these albums in between. Just I don't know what the story behind that is.
yep.
It just seems odd you would have all these albums and be like, nah, we're not gonna have that out there. Or maybe they're saying, hey, look, listen to the old stuff. We know you like that. I don't know. I don't know
Right.
what the reason. But yeah,
Right.
this is a solid album. It really is a good album.
Yes. I implore people to give it a shot. Maybe give it 2 shots. And Ghost, like you said, man, that's one of my favorite Skid Row songs of all time.
That's
Born
a
a
good tune.
Beggar, oh, fucking great. And if you're a pussy ballad guy, go listen to See You Around. Um, I just that album, man, I really I think if it had been given a chance, it wasn't going to, but if it had been given a chance, it could have set like, a band like Skid Row up for a revival, just like, in 87 when Permanent Vacation came out and suddenly Aerosmith was back
Yeah.
from the dead. Like that could have happened with a band like Skid Row with an album like this, but it didn't happen. Hey, uh, in the comments, tell us there's got to be a ton of 2000s albums from hair metal bands that we missed out on. Maybe we'll get to them later, but tell us what we should be listening to, what albums we missed out on. Would love it if you like, subscribe. Hey, you have the opportunity to be a member. It costs a little bit, but whatever you can do to support the channel, I truly do appreciate it. Bryan, thank you for being on to talk about albums, hair metal albums from the 2000s.
Thanks for having me on again. And check out my show Fridays on Stationhead. Download the app, put in Hairband Basement. If you miss it on Friday, I always have the recordings of previous shows. I think all my shows are on there. Check me out on X, formerly known as Twitter, at HB Basement. Always talking music there. And thanks again for having me on. It's always a blast.
Follow me on X at Hair Metal Guru. Come join the conversation until the next video comes out. My name's Anthony. They call me the Guru. Take care.